The 22nd of June, 1941. Under the code name Operation Barbarossa, Nazi Germany invades the Soviet Union, breaking the non-aggression pact between the two totalitarian regimes, as Adolf Hitler seeks to destroy communism and secure Lebensraum, meaning living space, in the East. The Red Army suffers catastrophic defeats, with entire armies encircled and captured. By the end of the year, more than 3 million Soviet soldiers fall into German hands. Hundreds of thousands die in captivity from starvation, disease, and exposure, while thousands of others, whether out of hatred for Stalin's regime or a desperate attempt to survive, choose to fight for the Germans. One of these collaborators will become a commander in the Russian National Liberation Army, known as RONA or the Kaminski Brigade, and in August 1944 his unit is deployed to Warsaw to crush the Polish uprising. His men are given free rein to terrorize the population, and in the Ochota district alone, they murder thousands of civilians. The atrocities committed under his command are so extreme that even the SS are appalled by what they see. The name of the commander responsible for these atrocities is Ivan Fralov. Ivan Denisovich Fralov was born on the 27th of January 1906 in the village of Svinucha, then part of the Russian Empire. The son of peasants, he completed 7 years of schooling before working in agriculture, and later joining the Red Army in 1928. He remained in military service after completing his initial term and gradually advanced through the ranks. In 1930, Fralov joined the Communist Party and the following year completed military political training courses. Between 1937 and 1938, he attended advanced officer training designed for senior Soviet commanders. Fralov was married, and the marriage with his wife, Agafya, produced 3 children. The Second World War started on the 1st of September 1939 when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. At the beginning of the German invasion of the Soviet Union, which began less than 2 years later, on the 22nd of June 1941, Frolov held the rank of major and was serving as a staff officer in the Red Army. During the fighting later that year, Frolov was captured by German forces, and while in captivity he openly expressed anti-Soviet views. The Germans later released him, and he joined the Russian National Liberation Army, a collaborationist force operating within the German-backed Lokot Autonomy, a self-governing region established by the Nazis near Bryansk in occupied Western Russia under the leadership of Bronislav Kaminski. By early 1943, Fralov had become chief of staff and was responsible for combat training. He drafted military regulations, organized training programs, and played a key role in transforming RONA from a local militia into a more structured fighting force. Fralov also commanded RONA's Guards Battalion, a unit of approximately 600 men. He participated in numerous anti-partisan operations in occupied Soviet territory and was awarded the Iron Cross Second Class for his service. He also wore the Iron Cross First Class, which he had appropriated for himself, but it had never been officially awarded to him. Following the expansion and reorganization of RONA, Fralov continued to rise through the ranks and eventually became head of its operations department. By June 1944, when the RONA unit was incorporated into the Waffen SS, which was the military branch of the SS, Fralov was one of Kaminski's most trusted officers. That summer, he and the men under his command were sent to Warsaw in German-occupied Poland, where they would play a central role in the atrocities that would leave thousands of civilians dead. On the 1st of August 1944, the Warsaw Uprising began. At exactly 5 p.m., known as W hour, units of the Polish Home Army launched a coordinated attack against German forces throughout the city. The operation had been carefully prepared and was intended to liberate Warsaw before the advancing Soviet Red Army could enter the city and establish a communist government loyal to Moscow. By seizing control of the capital themselves, the Polish resistance hoped to demonstrate that Poland remained capable of governing its own affairs and securing its independence. To the Nazi leadership, however, the uprising represented far more than a military challenge. After nearly 5 years of occupation, it was seen as a final act of Polish defiance that had to be crushed without mercy. Adolf Hitler issued the following order regarding the uprising. Every inhabitant must be killed, no prisoners are to be taken. Warsaw is to be razed to the ground, creating a terrifying example for all of Europe. On the 4th of August, 1944, at around 10 o'clock in the morning, about 1,700 RONA troops under Major Ivan Fralov entered Warsaw's Ochota district. Almost immediately, the operation descended into chaos. Instead of fighting the insurgents, the RONA troops, most of whom were unmarried men consisting primarily of Russians, with smaller Belarusian and Ukrainian contingents, began carrying out rapes, robberies, and murders, first targeting civilians on nearby Opachevska Street. Groups of soldiers stormed into people's homes and forced the residents out, some of whom were shot, especially if they refused to leave. Most of the buildings on Opachevska Street were set on fire that day after being looted. People were also killed in nearby garden plots, and the residents of 104 Grujecka Street were killed with grenades while hiding in the basement. On the 5th of August, as more and more civilians were forced from their homes, the Germans set up a makeshift camp in Ochota to hold people before sending them to a transit camp outside Warsaw. The camp was located at a former vegetable market known as Zieleniak. As residents were driven out of their homes, they were stripped of watches, jewelry, and anything of value. Witnesses later described how soldiers, eager to take rings and valuables, cut off fingers, and tore earrings from people's ears, sometimes along with pieces of flesh. Anyone who resisted was often shot or beaten to death. As people were marched towards Zieleniak, the RONA troops continued their attacks. Young women and girls were pulled from the crowds and raped in ruins and doorways. Some victims were shot simply because they could not keep up with the march, while others were dragged from the crowd and shot on the spot. Soldiers also fired into crowds for amusement or threw grenades into them. By the evening of the 5th of August, between 10 and 20,000 residents of Ochota and the surrounding districts had been rounded up and forced into the camp. The RONA troops took over the marketplace buildings and used nearby huts as guard posts. The camp was enclosed by a brick wall, making escape impossible. Inside the camp, conditions were catastrophic. There were no toilets, no medical care, and almost no food. Occasionally, prisoners were given small amounts of moldy bread, but there was no drinking water. On the 8th of August, the RONA soldiers drove several cows into the market and then shot them. In the chaos that followed, several Poles were also killed or wounded. Because lighting a fire was punishable by death, the prisoners were forced to eat the meat raw. To protect themselves from rape, women and girls smeared their faces with mud or soot, wore men's clothes, cut or disheveled their hair, pretended to be pregnant, menstruating, or disabled, or put on fake bandages, hoping not to attract the attention of their tormentors. Families also sometimes hid young women and girls under piles of clothes or blankets. They spared no one, not even little girls, old women, or women who had just given birth. Women were sometimes gang-raped by a dozen or more men. After the war, one witness described in detail the ordeal the women had to go through. He said, "Evening and night fell. lit by the fires of houses near Zieleniak. Everything was red and bloody. A hellish night began. Drunken groups of frenzied brutes trampled over people looking for young women and girls. Then they dragged them to the wall, and there, amid inhuman screams, laughter, and howling, they raped them. Near the gate of Zieleniak, a huge pile of bodies quickly grew. Dozens more lay by the wall or along the roads leading to the market. No one buried them, so in the summer heat they rotted quickly. Eventually, the RONA troops ordered that the bodies be buried in shallow graves by the fence. They also burned bodies in the local high school gymnasium. In total, more than 1,000 people died at Zieleniak camp from executions, beatings, starvation, and disease. At least 300 were killed directly by RONA troops. The unit's conduct was so extreme that it alarmed even some German commanders. Both SS and regular German army officers complained about the Kaminski Brigade's indiscipline, drunkenness, looting, and attacks on civilians. SS Obergruppenführer Erich von dem Bach-Zelewski, the commander of all German forces suppressing the uprising, later recalled that RONA soldiers were more interested in plunder than military operations, describing how they carted away stolen jewelry, gold watches, and other valuables from Warsaw. Some returned from Warsaw with 5 kilograms of gold. The Second World War in Europe ended on the 8th of May, 1945. Following Germany's defeat, Fralov was captured by American forces and interned at a camp near the city of Landau in southwestern Germany. Although he later escaped from captivity, he was recaptured and handed over to the Soviet authorities. Fralov was subsequently investigated by Smersh, the Soviet military counterintelligence organization. During questioning, he denied that his men had participated in the execution of civilians during the Warsaw Uprising and claimed he knew nothing about mass killings. According to Fralov, civilian casualties had resulted primarily from air raids and artillery attacks on buildings occupied by insurgents. In May 1946, he was formally brought before the military collegium of the Supreme Court of the Soviet Union. Unlike during his earlier interrogations, Fralov admitted guilt during the proceedings. Even then, he attempted to justify the actions of his unit, claiming that his men had merely carried out orders and that the insurgents bore responsibility for many civilian deaths. The court, however, was not persuaded. On the 31st of December 1946, Ivan Fralov was executed. He was 40 years old.
Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.